Discover the incredible ways 1 million Victorians found heartwarming heat in harsh winters. The winds howled like a pack of wolves outside Annie Miller's diner, their cold fingers wrapping around the small town of Victorian Springs, threatening to snuff out the last flickers of warmth. At 34, Annie was a warrior of the heart, wielding her smile like a shield against the bitter chill. Her diner stood as a beacon of hope for families struggling to fend off the wintry gloom. But as the town prepared for a blizzard that would cut them off from the outside world, Annie felt the weight of her responsibilities crashing down on her. She had to be strong for her 2 children, sweet little Lucy and young Matt, who relied on her for warmth not just from the cold, but from the unforgiving loneliness that wrapped around the town like an icy blanket. "Simon, we can do this," she exclaimed, coaxing warmth into the hearts of her neighbors as they gathered. "Let us share blankets, hot meals, and stories. We need one another more than ever." Her eyes sparkled as she spoke of unity. They were memories of happier days spent tucked under Grandma's quilt with hot cocoa in hand. But her plea met resistance from Paul, the town's steadfast war veteran. "Annie, this isn't how you build character," he grumbled, his rugged features shadowed by disbelief. "We can't just hand out help like it means nothing. Our struggles build our worth." As the storm escalated outside, snowflakes swirling like tortured spirits, tensions started rising inside the diner. Residents were caught in a tug-of-war, hearts divided. Some rallied around Annie's vision, hungry for togetherness, while others echoed Paul's warnings, fears echoing in their minds like a siren. Heartbeats raced as the blizzard raged. Silence fell heavy in the air. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with that reminder. The passion reignited in Annie. She reached out to fellow supporters, her eyes glimmering with grit. She remembered how her own mother carried the weight of their family, how neighbors banded together in dark times. We can't let the past chain our hearts. Love, kindness, and a helping hand, that's what defines us. Let us not let the blizzard freeze our spirits. The town was alive with a restless energy, drawing nearer to each other, but unresolved issues loomed like the storm clouds overhead. Just then, an incredible act of kindness pierced through the gloom. An anonymous gift arrived at the diner door, a basket filled with food, blankets, and a note that whispered possibilities of warmth. It was simple yet profound, stirring something deep within them. Suddenly, doors began to open, hearts began to thaw. But still, as the storm raged on, Annie's vision was threatened. Would they let go of their pride and come together? She could feel the biting cold of isolation creeping in once again. Would love prove strong enough to unite them or falter in the face of stubbornness? The storm raged on, a symphony of swirling snow and howling winds, but inside the diner, a spark of hope ignited. As the residents began to gather around the makeshift table in the center of the room, the mood shifted. The weight of Paul's sternness began to lighten, replaced by whispers of possibility and shared warmth. "Look at this. This is a start." Annie pointed to the basket, her voice threaded with excitement. "Let us keep this coming. Whoever sent this can't be the only one willing to lend a hand." She glanced at Paul, who stood off to the side, arms crossed, his skepticism palpable. "You see?" she urged him. "Even in this storm, kindness is still out there." Paul's expression softened just a bit. Maybe he muttered, "But kindness doesn't pay the bills or fill empty stomachs." A soft voice cut through the tension. It was Helen, a widow who had lived in Victorian Springs longer than anyone could remember. "Paul, we all know this winter has been tough on us. It's not just about charity, it's about survival. And that means support, too." Annie's heart swelled as she witnessed the cracks begin to form in the walls of stubbornness around her neighbors. Helen's words hung in the air like a gentle snowflake, settling into the hearts of everyone present. Then, something magical happened. People began sharing. Susan from down the street broke out her famous chili recipe, while Mark dug into his stash of firewood to share with families struggling to heat their homes. The chatter grew, laughter bubbling over the din of the howling winds outside. Annie watched in amazement, realizing that her vision of unity was taking shape, piece by piece. With every act of kindness exchanged, the diner grew warmer, a sanctuary against the elements. Kids sat at the countertops, gathered around with wide eyes, listening to tales spun from the memories of older generations. These stories connected them, tales of resilience, hope, and the lessons learned from past winters. Annie couldn't help but beam. The diner, once just a place for food, had transformed into a refuge. She felt proud, overwhelmed with a sense of belonging she thought was lost in the winter chill. But as the joy swelled in her heart, Paul's lingering doubt remained. He had retreated to a corner, his brow furrowed as he watched the thaw of the townsfolk. "It's too easy to forget the hard work it takes to actually make a change," he called out, voice steely against the backdrop of laughter. "This isn't sustainable." "Maybe not," Annie countered firmly, stepping towards him, "but together is a start. Sometimes, it takes a storm to remind us of what truly matters." Just then, the door swung open, and a gust of wind blew through the diner, carrying with it a mysterious figure, half hidden by layers of clothing. The figure stepped in, shaking off the snow that clung to them, and all eyes turned to this unexpected guest. "Who are you?" someone asked, the confusion palpable in the air. The stranger looked up, a glimmer of warmth in their eyes. "I heard there was a call for help," they said with a smile, "and I've come to contribute." Annie's heart raced. What would this new person bring? Would their arrival change the course of the evening? In that moment, the storm outside seemed to pause, and so did the heartbeat of the diner, as they anticipated what new warmth would enter their lives. Would this storm of winter bring them together or push them apart? The answer hung in the air, thick with promise. The stranger stepped forward, their breath visible in the cold air that flooded the diner. Removing the scarf from around their neck, they revealed a young woman with bright eyes and a contagious smile. "I'm Clara. I heard about this storm and figured it was time to lend a hand." Annie felt an electric surge of energy course through the room. Going from one flicker of warmth to another, she could almost see the light in everyone's eyes grow brighter in Clara's presence. "What do you bring, Clara?" she asked, feeling the weight of curiosity settle over the crowd. "Food, warmth, and a few blankets. I've been traveling around trying to gather what I can. Everyone needs a bit of help, don't you think?" She looked around the room, her gaze lingering on Paul, who still stood stiffly against the wall, hard to crack. "Thank you," Helen said, her voice warm and soft. "How did you know to come here?" Clara smiled and shrugged. "I followed the scent of chili." Laughter erupted in the diner, breaking the last remnants of tension that hung heavily around Paul. She unloaded her supplies onto the table. Clara set out pots of stew and trays of steaming hot biscuits. Each item seemed to breathe life into the diner. The aroma wrapped around them like a cozy blanket, drawing people closer together, stirring conversations to life once more. "Let us eat," Clara exclaimed, dishing out portions to eager hands. Kids rushed to help, filling cups and plates, their giggles echoing as they shared stories of snow forts and sledding. As the food spread, Annie stole glances at Paul. She recognized the shift in him, the gradual melting of his icy demeanor. His arms were still crossed, but no longer with defiance. It was a protective gesture now, as if he was guarding an unexpected warmth beginning to settle in his chest. "Clara, where did you come from?" Annie asked, wanting to know more about this beacon of hope. "I grew up in a small town like this, and during a winter storm a few years back, someone helped my family when we were struggling. It meant everything to us. Now I feel like it's my turn to pay it forward," she replied, her voice steady and sincere. Annie's heart swelled. The connection ran deep. It reminded her of the unbreakable threads between people in a community, the way generosity weaves its way through hard times, binding hearts together. "Maybe Paul is right about the hard work, but you just showed us that small acts do matter," Annie said, turning to the man who had been her biggest skeptic. Paul's gaze softened, and for a moment, Annie caught a glimpse of the man. He could be a man who understood that kindness didn't just warm the body, but the spirit too. Just then, the door swung wide open again. This time, a group of 3 bundled figures stumbled in, cheeks rosy and laughter spilling into the diner. "We heard there's a party in here," one of them shouted. "What's going on?" The newcomer exclaimed, eyes wide at the scene unfolding before them. The laughter and camaraderie were infectious, their presence only adding to the growing warmth and joy in the room. Annie stood at the edge of the unfolding miracle, realizing that each new arrival was a thread weaving into the larger tapestry of community. But with every addition, she sensed a change within Paul, a slow thaw of his once frozen heart. Would he embrace this now? Was he ready to become a part of something meaningful? As they all settled in, snacking on biscuits and sharing stories, Annie took a deep breath. The very air buzzed with potential. What warmth still lay ahead? What bonds would be forged as they faced the storm together? She glanced at Paul, half hoping and half fearing his next words. Would he finally say what they all needed to hear? The moment hung, thick with anticipation, leaving everyone wondering just how transformative this one night could truly be. Annie could feel the energy in the room shift again as the newcomers settled into their seats, their cheerful banter blending harmoniously with the rich smells of food. She watched as Clara moved among the crowd, offering biscuits to children and sharing anecdotes of her travels, her laughter a beacon that pulled everyone closer. For just a moment, the storm outside felt irrelevant, like an afterthought to the burgeoning warmth inside the diner. Paul shifted, uncrossing his arms and giving a subtle nod toward Clara. It was a mere flicker of acceptance, but to Annie, it felt monumental. The man who had barely engaged moments before was now drawn out, cautiously participating in conversations. He said, his voice barely above the chatter, "It's not just the food that helps. It's the human connection." The admission came out like a quiet revelation, and Annie's heart skipped. "Exactly," Clara exclaimed, her face lighting up. "That's what this is all about. We're all in this together, especially now." As the night progressed, the conversations grew richer. The new patrons shared tales of snow days and childhood, their eyes sparkling with nostalgia, while Clara encouraged everyone to share their own stories. Annie could see the change in the atmosphere. The laughter was louder, the smiles wider, and Paul, he seemed a little less like a stone statue and a bit more like a man in search of something real. The door jangled once more, and in walked another figure, a tall man with a rugged face and a lumberjack shirt that looked perfectly suited for the wintry chaos outside. He shook off snowflakes from his cap and scanned the room, a soft expression creeping into his features as he took in the lively scene. "Did I miss the party?" he called out, a grin breaking through as he made his way to the counter. The chatter quieted for a moment, the atmosphere shifting as everyone turned to welcome yet another stranger with open arms. "Not at all," said Clara, her smile infectious. "Come join us." Annie's excitement bubbled within her. With each new face, it seemed the circle of warmth widened. It became clear that anyone who stepped through the diner doors tonight was being embraced into something special, something that radiated hope, camaraderie, and maybe more. As the new man introduced himself as Ethan, he dove straight into the mix of card games and laughter with the kids, making them giggle as he told them about the wildlife he encountered during his recent hike. Amidst the chatter, Annie stole a glance at Paul again, trying to gauge what he was feeling. His features were softer now, and she could see a spark of curiosity flickering in his eyes as he listened to Ethan. Just as Annie felt the night could not get any better, Clara drew everyone's attention. "How about we share a few goals or dreams we have for this year?" she suggested, her voice rising above the chatter. "With a storm like this, let us remind ourselves of the warmth we're aiming for in our lives. It can be anything: a new job, reconnecting with an old friend, or simply being kinder." The room went quiet, each face thoughtful, as they contemplated Clara's words. Annie's heart raced at the thought. Could this be the moment that brought out Paul's deepest fears or unspoken desires? Something told her that this shared experience could peel back his defenses, shining a light on the vulnerable heart beneath. As they settled into silence, waiting for each brave soul to share their dreams. Annie's breath caught. Would Paul step forward? Would he reveal what his heart had been guarding for so long? The weight of expectation hung over the diner, leaving everyone on the edge, waiting for the first brave soul to break through. Would Paul find the courage to join them, or would he slip back into the shadows, leaving the warmth of connection behind? The silence hung thick in the diner, almost tangible. Everyone's eyes darted towards each other in anticipation, the collective energy buzzing like static before a storm. Annie's pulse quickened. She focused on Paul, wondering if he would rise to the occasion. "Come on," she whispered to herself, willing him to speak. The light from the hanging lamps danced in the laughter lines around Clara's eyes. But there was tension in the air. Everyone was waiting. Would Paul take that leap? Finally, a little boy at the back piped up, breaking through the tension. "I want to have a puppy." His innocent enthusiasm brought a chorus of chuckles and nods, easing the atmosphere. Clara clapped her hands. "That's a great dream. Who else wants to share?" Encouraged by the small voice, another diner chimed in. "I want to travel to Europe. I've always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower." There were murmurs of appreciation. A few others voiced their dreams of adventure, and the room began coming alive again, each word warming the already cozy space. But still, Annie's gaze remained fixated on Paul. He looked deep in thought, his brow furrowed, as if wrestling with unseen weights. "Paul?" Clara's gentle call directed attention back to him. The room quieted, and all eyes were on him. His throat worked as he swallowed hard, and for a moment, it felt like the world had paused just for him. I want to rebuild my life," he finally said, his voice steady but soft, a brave admission amongst the crowd. After everything, the room seemed to inhale collectively, leaning in closer, wrapping around his words. Annie felt relief wash over her. This was it. He had taken a step towards connection. Sharing pain could be the medicine they all needed. "What does that look like for you?" she asked, her voice warm and inviting. Paul hesitated for a moment but then continued, "I want to reconnect with my family." His eyes flickered, holding onto the memories just out of reach, the vulnerability of his admission hanging in the air. "Family is everything," Clara encouraged, her eyes shining with empathy. "What would be your first step?" "I don't know," he sighed, a mix of hope and despair crossing his features. "Maybe just reaching out to my brother. It's just hard." Surrounding murmurs echoed that understanding. Annie's heart swelled. She couldn't imagine the weight of what he was feeling, but there was something powerful in his honesty. In a world where people often put on a brave front, Paul had cracked open a door to his pain, letting a glimmer of light shine through. Ethan leaned in, his voice kind and supportive. "You're not alone, man. It takes courage to even think about reaching out. Let us know how we can help." The camaraderie in the room surged, an unspoken promise of support that rippled through everyone as faces began to share compassion. Annie felt a swell of connection sprouting. Just as she thought they were about to encircle Paul with warmth, another gust of wind howled outside, bringing a blast of snow through the slightly open door. In an instant, the moment shifted, and the reality of the storm outside seemed to pierce through the warmth they had created. Clara rushed to close it, and just as she did, the lights flickered, giving everyone pause. "Oh, power us out," someone joked, but the laughter that ensued was tinged with a bit of nervousness. Annie felt her stomach drop. They had come so far, sharing their hearts. Would the darkness steal that light away? As the power flickered and then died completely, plunging the diner into dimness, she glanced at Paul, whose expression now mirrored her own uncertainty. They had stepped into vulnerability, and together, they buzzed with newfound strength. But would this darkness extinguish the hope they had built? As the room fell silent again in the aftermath, a warm voice cut through the enveloping shadows. "How about we keep sharing?" Ethan suggested, his tone steady. "We can light candles and keep the warmth alive." Everyone nodded eagerly, determined that no storm, not even one of power, would quench their newfound sense of community. But as the storm raged on outside, a flicker of worry shadowed Annie's heart. What unforeseen challenges awaited them in this darkness? And would they be strong enough together to face whatever was next? In the thick darkness, the diner felt more like a cocoon than a place to eat. Shadows danced on the walls, flickering like fragile memories, and every voice seemed to resonate with a surprising harmony, fueled by the warmth of shared vulnerability. Annie blinked, adapting to the dimness. She could just see Ethan pulling out a pack of emergency candles he always kept handy. A few others joined him, rummaging through drawers looking for matches, their laughter a blend of nervousness and determination. "Here, I got a lighter," Clara exclaimed, striking the match against the box. The flame flickered to life, illuminating her face in soft golden hues. As she lit the candles one by one, hope crackled in the air like the fire itself, each candle a tiny beacon against the enveloping shadow. Annie felt her heart flutter as she watched Paul, who sat still, his eyes reflecting the wavering light. Would this moment rally him to speak again? She slipped her hand gently over his and squeezed. "You've got this," she whispered, feeling the warmth of connection spread between them. "They say that when the light dims, our true selves shine brighter," Paul finally said, breaking the silence that thickened again like fog. "And I guess I'm trying to find my shine." His voice was tinged with uncertainty but also a fierce bravery. Ethan nodded, his eyes wide. "That's right. We all have our shine, and together, we can light up the darkest nights." The laughter came easy again, mixed with nods of agreement, a teasing undercurrent to their words. "All right then," Clara said playfully, as she clapped her hands. "Who's going to be the first to share a cozy winter story while we all huddle together for warmth?" Before anyone could think, the little boy who had spoken first about the puppy chimed in again, his voice bright against the dark. "I remember last winter, my dad made hot cocoa, and we watched movies by the fire." His innocent joy tugged at everyone's hearts. Just listening to him brought giggles and memories rushing forward. "Hot cocoa. Oh man, I missed that." Someone laughed, and soon everyone was sharing their favorite winter memories, melding the past with the present. Annie decided to join in. "My sister and I, we used to make giant snowmen together and try to decorate them with anything we could find." As she spoke, she could feel Paul's attention sharpening, his earlier worries pushed to the back of his mind as each story unfolded. The diner transformed from merely a place to survive the storm into a sanctuary of warmth laden with nostalgic laughter and tears. The bond between them grew thicker, like the frosting on a gingerbread house, each little intricacy a piece of their shared narrative. But then, just as the mood lifted, another scream from the wind plowed through the walls of the diner, strong enough to rattle like ghosts in the grain. The room fell into a hush again, punctuated only by the crackle of candle flames. "Okay, that one was a bit spookier," one diner chuckled nervously, but the tension lingered in the air, as though they could feel the weight of the storm pressing down on them. Annie looked around, taking in the faces gathered together a mosaic of hope and fear, laughter and unresolved pain. She latched onto Paul's gaze, sensing that under the surface, something deeper was brewing. His eyes sparkled with thoughts unspoken, and the shadows of doubt passed briefly. "Maybe we should also talk about what frightens us," she suggested, testing the waters. "Face it head-on." He took a breath, lips pressed together in thought. They were all fighting their own storms. Would they be brave enough to navigate through those? Her heart raced with anticipation and uncertainty. Would this act of solidarity only bring them closer, or would it expose their deepest insecurities? As the wind howled yet again outside, a storm of truths seemed to build within the group. What would they reveal? And who would be the first to embrace the darkness within? A shiver cascaded through the diner as the wind howled even louder, rattling the glass like nature's percussion. Faces turned toward one another, eyes full of a mix of trepidation and the flickering warmth given off by the candles. Annie held her breath, wondering who would be brave enough to step forward first into the shadowy depths of their fears. Clara broke the silence, her voice shaky but painfully honest. "I guess I'm scared of things getting worse. The world outside is so chaotic, and sometimes it feels like I can't keep up." Her words hung in the air, heavy yet honest, like a stone dropped into still water. Others nodded, the recognition of a shared fear weaving its way through the group. Annie felt Paul's hand tighten around hers. She looked at him, sensing he was weighing his options. His storm rumbled inside him, and she could feel it. "Thank you for sharing that, Clara," Paul finally said, his voice low but steady. "Well, I'm scared of being forgotten. That one day, I'll fade away, and no one will remember me." The candid admission was like a crack in a dam, allowing feelings to spill out. The quiet that followed felt intimate. Some shifted in their seats. A few breathed deeply, and Annie swore she could almost sense the weight of shared burdens lifting. I think we all feel a little forgotten sometimes," Ethan chimed in, his brow furrowed. "Life moves so fast and we're just trying to hang on. I don't want to lose the people I care about." Annie felt tears prick her eyes. They were all grappling with something, big or small. The notion of connection began to deepen in the flickering candlelight. Unity formed in their raw honesty. Fears became the threads stitching their lives together. "Maybe we should make it okay to be vulnerable," she suggested softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "If we can share our fears together, perhaps it won't loom as large." Clara took a breath, feeling the gust of admiration sweeping through her for Annie's gentleness. "I like that idea. Like a chain reaction? One light after another?" "Exactly," Annie smiled. "Together, we create a tapestry of hope and strength." The little boy's voice piped up, cutting through the weight. "Like superheroes. I want to be a hero with you guys." His innocent declaration brought laughter back, breaking the tension like a bubble. Faces brightened at the thought of elevating their fears to a place of shared strength. Annie joined in the laughter, but as it faded, a thought tugged at her. But what if facing our fears shows us that we're more powerful than we think? That notion lingered in the air, wrapping around them like a warm hug, but the wind outside roared louder, as if to remind them of the chaos still swirling just beyond the diner's walls. "What if," Paul said, more resolute than before, "by sharing our fears, we can actually begin to shape our own destinies?" His eyes gleamed with realization, illuminating the once dim shadows of uncertainty. The ripple of conversation ignited again, and one by one, they began to share their vulnerabilities, echoes of hearts reaching out to meet one another in the expansive dark. As they delved deeper, a haunting howl ripped through the diner. Lights flickered momentarily, dimming the flame of their newfound courage. A sudden crash came from outside, silencing laughter mid-sentence. "What was that?" Annie gasped, heart thudding wildly. Everyone fell still, caught between the warmth of laughter and the chill of impending dread. Would their stories of vulnerability shield them from whatever awaited them outside? Or would they face a storm not just of weather, but of fate? The moment thickened with anticipation, and Annie's thoughts swirled. Would they be prepared for the shadows that lurked, even as they stood together? Heartbeats quickened as eyes flitted toward the windows, the moonlight casting eerie shadows across their faces. Annie's mind raced. The laughter had barely faded, and now dread hung heavy in the air. Paul's grip tightened on her hand, and she could feel the warmth of his reassurance seep into her skin. "Maybe it's just the wind?" Clara offered, her voice rising over the growing concern. But in her eyes, Annie could see the flicker of doubt. "What if it is something more?" Paul replied, a hint of urgency creeping into his tone. Ethan shifted in his seat, looking at the door as if expecting it to burst open. "Should we check?" Annie swallowed hard. The thought of stepping outside felt like being pulled toward a dark abyss. She glanced around the table, seeing the same fears mirrored in the faces of her friends. No one wanted to be the first one to break. The little boy spoke up again, his small voice steady. "I think we should be brave. Heroes go into the storm." His innocence was a stark contrast to the tension gripping the diner, reminding them of the strength they had just acknowledged. "Bravery, huh?" Annie smiled despite her fear. "Maybe he's right." Paul met her gaze and something shifted. "We just talked about facing our fears. So let us do it. Together." His words were a call to action, and it resonated. Clara nodded, determination hardening her features. Together, she echoed, her earlier uncertainty dissolving. Annie could feel the spark of courage igniting among them, but it was still daunting. They shuffled toward the door, hearts pounding, the laughter of moments before now waning into echoes of resolve. As Paul reached for the handle, another gust of wind howled outside, sending chills racing down their spines. On three, Paul suggested, his voice steadying. 1, 2, 3. He flung the door open. The howling wind rushed in, tugging at their clothes and whipping their hair around like frenzied spirits. Annie gasped as she peered outside. The street lights flickered, casting long, eerie shadows. The scene was chaos. Remnants of fallen branches littered the ground, remnants of a storm that had crept in far more violently than anticipated. Then they saw it, a creature, not far from the diner, twisted and hunched, its eyes glinting with a feral light. It didn't seem to belong in their world. A wild apparition that stomped toward them through the debris of fallen leaves and branches. Annie's heart raced. "What is that?" she whispered, clenching Paula's hand as fear surged through her body. A collective gasp echoed from the group. "Could it be a dog?" "It looks hurt," Clara suggested, stepping forward despite the visible tremor in her voice. Or worse, Ethan's voice was lower now, heavy with the weight of apprehension. "Maybe it needs help? It might be just as scared as we are," Annie said, her instincts clashing against her fear. "But what if it is dangerous?" Paul questioned, glancing back at her. An electric moment hung in the air as they stood torn between instinct and fear. Would they take that step toward the unknown? Would the shared vulnerability that had knitted them together be enough to illuminate the dark ahead? In that charged silence, with the shadowy creature inching closer, all eyes turned to Annie, waiting for her to break the stillness. With a shaky breath, she took a step, her heart pounding against the cage of her ribs. "Maybe we're the heroes it needs, or maybe it's just here to teach us about courage." The air wrapped around them thick with anticipation as Annie stepped out, ready to face whatever awaited them. But as the creature approached, its form started to shift and change under the dim light, revealing something she never expected. Annie squinted into the darkness as the creature drew nearer, its shape flickering under the struggling streetlight. What once looked grotesque now held a glimmer of familiarity. The shifting shadows melded, revealing soft fur and a long snout. "Wait," she breathed. "Is it a dog?" Paula's grip on her hand relaxed slightly, letting curiosity dance in place of fear. "Look at its body language. Seems scared, not aggressive." His voice was reassuring, its steadiness echoing the resolve that had surged in the diner moments ago. Clara stepped forward, her maternal instincts kicking in. "Hey there." "It's okay," she cooed, attempting to soothe the creature. The dog stopped, its eyes bright and wide, swimming with fear and uncertainty. Slowly, it lowered its head, hesitant yet willing to receive comfort. Ethan mirrored Clara's cautious approach, kneeling down, palms open and low. "Easy now, buddy. No one's going to hurt you." His voice was calm, drawing the creature in. Annie couldn't believe how quickly the anxiety shifted, replaced by pity for the lost soul before them. "Look, it might have been abandoned during the storm. Let us get it inside." Paul shot her a concerned glance. "But what if it bites? Or maybe it just needs someone to trust again," she countered, her heart swelling with empathy. "Can't we at least try?" With a collective nod, they sidled closer, easing into the moment. Clara inched forward, reaching out as the dog took a hesitant step back. "It's all right," she murmured. Just a little closer then, like a slow unraveling thread. The dog came closer, its tail barely wagging as hope returned to its stance. A ragged whimper escaped its mouth, and Annie knelt down, letting it sniff her. She felt the warmth radiating from its body, pulling her further into its desperate world. "This is a sign," Annie whispered, looking at her friends. It was more than a dog in need. This was about their own journey, their own fears. "It's showing us we can take that step into the unknown." Finally, the dog made its choice, leaning into her hand, seeking comfort. Annie grinned, feeling an overwhelming rush of resolve course through her. "We're going to take care of you," she promised, Not just to the animal but to herself and her friends. As the tension began to fade, the winds outside shifted, calming ever so slightly. With every passing moment, the night sky felt less menacing, transforming into a blanket of stars that dared to peek through the clouds. "Let us find it some food and get it dried off," Clara suggested, her voice brightening as relief washed over her. But just as they turned to head back into the diner, a low growl disrupted the quiet. A second, shadowy figure emerged from the darkened corner of the street, its eyes glowing fiercely. "That doesn't look friendly," Ethan said, his voice tightening, fear washing back over them. Annie's heart dropped. Had they stumbled into something bigger than they could handle? And just when they thought they were the heroes, were they about to face the real danger lurking beyond? With their newfound friend in peril, and the darkness creeping closer, they faced a choice that could test their newfound courage. A hush fell over the diner as Annie and her friends clutched each other, their earlier triumph flickering in the face of this new threat. The winds outside howled like vengeful spirits, casting a shadow over their hearts. But they had come so far together. They couldn't let fear undo the warmth they had built. "Stay close," Paul commanded, determination rising in his voice. "We've faced storms before. Let us not let this one intimidate us." It was a small but powerful shift. He stepped forward, his eyes locked onto the second figure as it slinked closer. Annie felt a surge of pride. Paul, the man who clung to his doubts, was stepping into his strength. "Together," she shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. "No one faces this alone." The creature emerged fully from the shadows, resembling a scruffy wolf with wild fur and fiery eyes. It snarled, but there was something behind the aggression, a fear that mirrored their own. "It's scared," Clara breathed, empathy flowing through her. "Like the other one." "Then maybe we need to show it kindness," Annie said. She moved closer, her heart pounding, more for herself than the creature. "Just like we did with the dog." At that moment, it felt as if the warmth in the diner reached out into the icy night, ready to blanket the fear that surrounded them. "Wait," Ethan said, pulling out a piece of jerky from his pockets. "I have some food, it might help." As he extended the treat, the wolf paused, its growl softening just a fraction. "Easy," Paul whispered, remaining steady as he stood shoulder to shoulder with Annie, as if their bond was a shield against the unknown. Together, they slowly crouched down, showing their openness. The wild creature hesitated, eyes flickering between Ethan and Clara, then slowly, tentatively, stepped forward until it caught a whiff of the food. Cautiously, it approached the hand that offered it, taking the jerky with a leap of trust that echoed through the diner. The atmosphere shifted again, proving that vulnerability and courage had a way of weaving connections no matter the being. "See?" Annie smiled through her awe. "We're all just trying to find our place. You want to belong too, right?" She could feel its spirit shifting, understanding slowly dawning in its eyes. "Let us get both of them inside," Clara said, her voice rich with hope, the warmth of her heart tangling with theirs, the connection deepening even more. With slow movements, the two anxious creatures began to follow them back into the diner, tailing behind the laughter and warmth they had ignited. The moment felt fragile but electric as they stepped back inside. The restaurant had transformed into a sanctuary. The hum of chatter resumed, the air full of laughter and loving connection. Children crowded around to see the newcomers, their innocent chatter lifting the spirits even further. The once ominous storm now felt distant, a stark reminder of the power of unity. "Look, they're just like us," a little girl squealed, her eyes sparkling with wonder. "They're our friends now." Annie felt a warmth rush over her. "Yes, together we make each other stronger," she cheered, beaming at the two surprised companions who had joined their family tonight as conversations flowed. Paul unleashed an unexpected laugh. His once stern demeanor melted completely. "Seems like we've become a pack after all," he said, gazing at the creatures. "We really are stronger together, aren't we?" His voice held newfound strength. Annie caught Clara's eye, and they exchanged a smile, realizing how far they'd come since that first turbulent gathering in the diner. "Let us celebrate," Annie called out, her heart swelling in sheer joy. Let us toss a winter feast for our new friends. Excitement erupted as they rushed off to gather food, laughter mixing in a perfect medley. Hours melted into laughter and stories. The walls of the diner warm with the glow of candles and hearts. The storm outside faded into nothingness, a backdrop to the brilliance blooming inside. Annie felt the weightless joy of community swell around her, brighter with each shared experience. This is what truly matters, she thought, joy bursting in her chest. Love binds us, lifts us, and helps us soar above whatever storms may come. As the evening drew to a close and the shadows receded, Annie looked around at the faces of newfound friends, both human and furry, and in that moment, she knew that each heart held the light of warmth, kindness, and the courage to continue sharing it, even in the harshest winters. Remember this night, she whispered to the dog nestled against her leg. It's the start of something beautiful. With unity and love carving new paths, they stood ready to embrace whatever came next together. This is your moment to shine. If you felt the warmth of this story, subscribe immediately to the channel for more exclusive tales that inspire. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this transformation. Leave a like now to help the algorithm spread love even further. And comment below your thoughts and feelings about this ending. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.